AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
All right, the Naperville JC's Last Fling is back from September 1st through September 4th. Enjoy the last of summer in downtown Naperville with carnival rides, live music, and food vendors. Admission is free. For more information, check out lastfling.org.
Maybe they can get Oliver Anthony.
Oh, yeah.
If they got him, I'd go. Dan Clifton is a investment advisor. He writes in Strategist to his clients, quote, "At near full employment, the budget deficit should be much lower than it is today. A slight increase in unemployment and deficits can balloon quite quickly on top of the interest costs. Ultimately, Congress will need to act on entitlements like it did in 1983, the last time net interest costs surged." The net interest costs he's talking about, 14% of tax revenue in July. That's what they hit, the level we consider the inflection point for fiscal policy. And not surprisingly, the bond market has reacted. Problem is, as Judy Shelton writes about in the Wall Street Journal, the problem is the latest budget numbers show an increase in government outlays of 10% so far this year, even as revenues have fallen by 10%. The federal government doesn't mind being inflated out of debt. And she writes, "It's clear where this is going. When government is unconstrained by budgetary discipline and monetary policymakers punish the private sector with high interest rates to rectify the errors of fiscal policy, democratic capitalism can't last long." So that's precisely what's at stake, small d democratic capitalism. For more on this, pleased to be joined by Steve Moore, economist, GovZilla author. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning, guys. By the way, the federal government can't really inflate its way out of this debt crisis. I mean, that's actually one of the lessons we're learning. Because, when you have inflation, that does reduce the real value of the debt, the real burden of the debt. But at the same time, as you raise inflation rates, as we've learned from Biden, that's what happens to interest rates. Those go up as well. So it's a losing game to try to depreciate your currency as a way of paying off the debt.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not saying it's good policy. I'm saying that's the policy of the modern monetary theorists in charge, and the point that Judy Shelton makes in connecting the dots is you unrestrained government with Fed mystics stepping in to try to deal with the unrestrained government. Well, it's hard to have anything resembling a market economy.
That's right. Well, look, I have a kind of very simple-minded, simple, I don't know if it's simple-minded solution to this. Hey, why don't we cut government spending?
Yeah, well.
Yeah, well, where would they start? What would you start with, Stephen Moore?
Well, okay. Well, I'm going to the debate today in Milwaukee. I don't know if either of you are driving up for that, but I want to see what these candidates say. But, we could get rid of 4 or 5 cabinet departments. We don't need a Department of Energy. We don't need a Department of Education. We don't need a Commerce Department. We don't need a Labor Department. You could save money on those things. You could
chump change. Chump change. What about entitlements? Nobody. What happened to Republicans being willing to speak about entitlements?
Well, I'm very much in favor of work requirements for every welfare program. The problem with I don't like these ideas that we have to cut Social Security benefits. I mean, Social Security is a ripoff. If you had a private account, you'd be earning 10 times more money from the
but no Republican is taking the George W. Bush toe in the water approach on turning Social Security into private IRAs.
What I'm saying, Dan, is what I'm saying is that cutting Social Security benefits is unfair to the people who paid in.
I agree, but I mean, but nobody's saying anything about entitlements in the Republican Party.
That's true.
That's the problem.
That's true. Now, on healthcare, I mean, let's just, have medical savings accounts for people and give people an incentive to save on their money. I'm not a healthcare expert. But, the main thing is, if you get back to 3% growth, we had a chart in our hotline the other day you might have seen, because of the compounding effects of higher economic growth, the debt burden is not going to rise. It's going to fall over time, even with existing spending. So you have to get the economy moving at a much more rapid pace, and we can do that.
Well, do you think any of the candidates tonight are going to stand out with some economic plan that's going to save our souls?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm very curious to what these, ladies and gentlemen will say. I think, how many? 9? How many are there?
8.
There 8, 9?
8, yeah.
If Bergen can make it, because
Bergen, he just got injured playing basketball, and he's at a Milwaukee hospital.
Yeah.
The governor of North
Who's
Dakota.
The governor of North Dakota,
He
Doug
is?
Burgum.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
That's what CNN's reporting.
Yeah.
They said it's debatable
debate?
whether or not he'll make the debate.
Oh, my God, because he's one of my favorites, actually. Most people don't even know who Doug Burgum is, but he's actually one of us.
He's a billionaire entrepreneur, built a billion-dollar business.
Yeah. He actually knows how to build a business, and he's, wants to have a flat tax. He wants to, cut government spending. He wants to run the government much more like a business. What a concept. So, look, I think the stakes are really high for Ron DeSantis, who's had a terrible, terrible 3 months. Whether he can, but I wouldn't be surprised if Trump doesn't. Remember what he did in Iowa, where he flew his plane over the Iowa State Fair when DeSantis was speaking. Maybe he'll fly his plane over the convention center in the middle of the debate. But it's going to be an awkward thing because the 800-pound gorilla, literally and figuratively, isn't going to be there.
Well, I mean, I should ask actually a predicate question. You, Kudlow, and Laffer have done this meet with the candidates before in previous election cycles to have a back and forth about economic matters. Are you doing that this time?
Yeah, we have, and we've had. You're going to love this. We've had. We're going to have one with Trump, and the first one we had was about 3 weeks ago with. I keep calling him Vivek, but I think it's pronounced Vivek Ramaswamy. And by the way, he blew people away. He was awesome. I mean, he is so impressive when you meet him in person. In some of the polls, he's in the second and third place now.
Yeah.
And so, but you know who we're having dinner with next Monday night? And Dan or Amy, if you want to fly up to New York for it, we'd love to have you. RFK Jr.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And people should watch, by the way, if you're interested in politics and you want to know more about RFK Jr., watch his interview with Tucker Carlson. Have either of you watched?
Yeah,
I did.
See, when you fly up to meet him, he's going to scold you for flying and not riding a bike to meet him.
Well,
Just
you
be
should watch
prepared.
it. He is quite impressive. I mean, the guy, look, he's crazy on some things, and about 30% of the time he's right, and that puts him way ahead of almost every other Democrat to be right 30% of the time.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Oh, no, go back to the Republican side. So you met with Ramos.
We're going to have Cornel West too. We're going to have Cornel West.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Oh, if you're
Green
buying,
candidate.
I'm flying.
Yeah, he's great.
Okay, you got it. Okay, Amy.
What?
We're gonna get you a first class ticket.
Oh yeah.
So I mean,
roll.
are these meetings to provide advice and counsel, or just an exchange of views?
Both.
Okay, so what was?
We have Larry and I and Steve Forbes and Laffer. Sit down with the candidate for an hour and try to straighten them out, and then they present their views to us, and we to a group of about 40 people, and we really have a back and forth exchange. And sometimes they perform very well, sometimes they bomb. I remember the first dinner we ever had was with Scott Walker, who's of course the former governor of Wisconsin, who I love and adore. I think he's a great man.
Yeah.
But he really, at that time, people forget, this time 8 years ago, Scott Walker was the front runner in the presidential nomination process for the Republicans, and he kind of bombed out and was the first one out of the field. So we'll see. But I want to see what I really want to see if any of these people kind of emerge as a star. Right now, it looks like Trump and the Seven Dwarfs. So
well, what about on matters economics? Since the central to the DeSantis record in Florida is it being a magnet for residents and wealth, and thus the growth. So what would your advice and counsel to DeSantis be tonight?
I think he has to not what he's been doing for the last 9 months is talking about the Florida record, which is, fantastic. I mean, you may have seen that California and Texas have imported $1 trillion of wealth from Illinois, California, and New York in the last several of years. That's amazing how much wealth and jobs and income is flowing out of the blue states into these red states. So he does a good job of talking about his record in Florida. What he's not doing, and this is the problem that Scott Walker had, is he's not talking about his vision for America. Okay, you've been a great governor. What are you going to do for the United States? So I think he's got to lay out a real concrete plan of action on, as you said, entitlement reform, tax reform, border, all of these issues that are front and center. What are you going to do to cut inflation? What are you going to do to bring down mortgage interest rates?
What do you on Ramaswamy, since he's the one that sort of occupied at least part of the lane that DeSantis was supposed to occupy?
Yeah.
What was so impressive about him to you, meeting him in person?
Well, he's very charismatic. And look, I don't say that in any negative way. I mean, he's a very charming person. He's a very good speaker. He's likable. And so he just comes across as being a knowledgeable, thoughtful, free market oriented guy. And then he has really great ideas. Like, for one, Amy, okay, you're going to be my focus group this morning. He has this idea that if you're between the ages of 18 and 21, to vote, you should have to pass a citizenship test. You should have to know something about your country. If we require immigrants to know something about our country to become a citizen, shouldn't young people know that kind of stuff before they vote?
Right. Well, I think they should know that before they graduate high school or in order to graduate from high school.
I agree with you entirely. So, he's putting out these really kind of cool ideas that are driving the left crazy. But I think there's a lot of wisdom to these things. And so we'll see how I think he may emerge as the kind of alternative to Trump in this race. Although Trump is still at 50%, and the rest of the field is dividing the other 50%, amongst themselves. But
do you think some of the scuttlebutt about Ramaswamy's business career, critical of it, I'm starting to hear more of is fair? They're sort of accusing him of making his money in a pump and dump operation in pharma, which I don't think actually is fair, but that's what's being bandied about as he's getting some traction.
Dan, I don't know much about his business background, so I can't say, whether these allegations are true or not. What is happening now, I don't know if you've noticed this in the last week or so, because his numbers are rising, the media is now really inspecting. So there was a report out the other day, something that really bothered me, that he supports a 60% inheritance tax.
That would bother me too. Yeah, I didn't even see that. But there's definitely more of a kicking of the tires that's required of Ramaswamy. There definitely is. When you had your sit down with him, was there any particular economic proposal or position that you thought, like, this is a guy we know we can trust to be a proponent of free markets?
Well, I wish you had been there, Dan, because he's talking about what you were just talking about earlier on the show, which is taking a chainsaw to the budget and really, doing the free market healthcare reforms. He wants to, eliminate cabinet agencies. He wants to reduce the federal bureaucracy. I think of all the candidates, he's the one who has been, the most ambitious in terms of really cutting. Look, our government today in America consumes 35 to 40% of our GDP. We have to get that number down to 25%. And so that means we have to cut 10% of GDP out of government because it's just consuming our economy. It's the reason the economy has been so bad. So if we don't do that, we're not going to be a free market country anymore.
On Trump, I mean, since we're talking about matters economic, here's one of the issues with Trump is his love affair with mercantilism in the form of tariffs. And he said the other day on Fox, I think when companies come in and they dump their products in the United States, they should pay automatically, let's say, a 10% tax. So now he's talking about not targeted tariffs, but universal tariffs.
Yeah. Well, by the way, universal tariffs are a much better policy than targeted tariffs because
fair
you
enough,
don't. What I object to is trade protectionist policies for one industry. What Larry and I have been talking to Trump about is okay, if you're going to put a 10% tax on everything that comes into the United States, then you should cut tax on our domestic company. In other words, don't make it a tax increase. Just shift the burden. And this makes sense to me, Dan. And I know, you're a free trader. I am. You may cringe when I say this. But why don't we put a 10% tax on everything that comes in and then reduce our corporate tax rate here on American companies? In other words, a tax code that puts America first, because every other country in the world has a value-added tax. So as soon as we export something to Mexico or Europe, they slap it with a 15% tax. So this would be a kind of parity type of policy that would actually encourage more job production and manufacturing here in the United States. I don't know, Amy, you could be the judge of that.
If she's considering that. Something else was something else on tax policy. Everybody's going to say I supported the Trump tax cuts. They're expiring in 25, so the next president matters. But is just re-upping the Trump tax cuts enough? It seems to me this would be an opportunity for somebody to separate themselves. Say the Trump tax cuts accomplished something, but when the sunset is near, here's what we should propose in terms of real comprehensive tax burden reductions that were not achieved with the Trump tax cuts.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you, Dan. I mean, look, Larry and I and some others really helped put that tax plan together for Trump, but it was just really a halfway measure at best to get where we want to be. And one of the things in addition to cutting the burden, you've got to simplify the tax system. The system is completely unintelligible. I mean, it's incomprehensible, this tax system. We wouldn't have to hire 87,000 new IRS agents if we had something that was really a simple, fair, easy to comply with and understand.
Not even somebody as smart as Hunter Biden can figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah. And I said yesterday on Fox, I said, well, Biden doesn't have any business, background, but of course he does. Now we realize he does have a business background because of his partners with Hunter and all this operation. And that was a pretty good business too, wasn't it?
Well, it seemed to be. Yeah.
Made a lot of money.
It was pretty good until it wasn't. Steve Moore, economist, Govzilla author. Enjoy the debate tonight, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Okay. See you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. Your business and your money are in good hands with Signature Bank. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hi, I'm Nick Phillippa.